So I'm going to start with the basics. I'm Eric. It's cool that we've got so many people signed up. Last month was great. I don't think we got this many people. But go ahead and throw questions in the chat window as we go. I will try to grab several of them, and I'll stick around towards the end for Q&A. I should be able to get this done in a little less time than last time. So tonight I was going to talk Google Analytics 4 because Doug and Marianne convinced me that after dealing with Google Tag Manager, that it'd be helpful if we knew if we actually knew some of the ins and outs of the new version of analytics. These slides are to keep me on topic mostly, but I will make a copy available for Doug, and he'll get it out to everybody. So Google Analytics, we're all familiar with it, or we should be, but I thought I'd do kind of a high level of how it works and what it's meant for. There are other services out there, but Google is the one that most of us migrate towards. Really, it's a platform to track our visitors and how they interact with our website, or with our applications and things like that. Collects a variety of information. But what we have to have is we have to have an account. These accounts are free. They're easy to set up. The link is analytics.google.com. And I can't even type it while I'm talking, but that's okay. They're free. They're 100% free to use because Google is going to benefit from this traffic information as well. So they give this to us. Now, really, setting up the account doesn't get us much. We have to embed this information into our website somehow. The standard is a small piece of JavaScript code. Now, this can be embedded via a plugin. This can be done via Tag Manager. We can do this by actually coding. I'm partial to using Tag Manager because I like using Tag Manager. Thanks, Doug, for the link. I like Tag Manager. It gives me a lot more flexibility with my configuration, and that's just been my personal preference. So what happens is every time a visitor hits our web page, based on how we've got our systems, our analytics configured, Google is going to track what they do, how long they stay, what pages they visit, potentially certain personally identifiable information. I will talk GDPR later, as far as we know for current GDPR standards. But it tracks information to know where your visitors are coming from and how they're interacting on your website. Helpful information to have, because it'll even get down to the point of, if configured correctly, of tracking screen sizes and operating systems and devices. So it'll tell you if you've got users coming in from the latest and greatest Google Pixel to using to somebody coming in on an old Nokia flip phone. If you're browsing the internet on a Nokia flip phone, I feel sorry for you, but it does happen. And I see somebody giggling, which means they have experienced surfing the internet on a flip phone. So it collects a lot of this information just to give us an idea of how people are interacting and who they are. Now, it can also go down to the point of tracking where they've come in from. In some cases, it will track that they're organic search, that they're a social media link. It may even track down to the point of saying, okay, they're coming from Facebook mobile versus actual Facebook. They're coming in through Google AdWords. It'll allow us to track all of the different pieces. Eagle, thank you. Google Tag Manager plugin. Check out last month's video. I understand the presentation was great. Sorry. So now what this plugin does, what Google Analytics does is that it gathers all this information up, and it kind of puts it in a pretty little package for us. It gives us a website where we can then start to go in and digest the data. Now, again, this is based on how you've configured things. And I'm talking analytics in general, both Google, Universal Analytics, the current standard that we've been using, GA4 that we're going to, and even some of the third-party services are going to work in a similar fashion. What they collect, how they're configured is where it really varies. But Google Analytics has been around for forever. Universal Analytics, the one we're on, is considered version 3. But we have determined through many court cases and discoveries of we shouldn't be doing it this way, that it might not be fully GDPR compliant. So that's where GA4, Google Analytics 4, starts to come around. This is what they're calling the next generation. Yes, that was a great TV show, but it has nothing to do with tonight. GA4, it's a new way of measuring things. They've changed a lot of terms. From what I understand, they actually bought some of this information from another company, the way that they're gonna do this. But what it does is no longer are we looking at you create a tag for, an analytics property for the website, and a different one for your application, and a different one for your MailChimp, and a different one. The idea behind GA4 is the entire user flow. So it wants to do their entire journey from your mobile app to your website. They might have come from your MailChimp or ActiveCampaign campaign that was out there, and how they flow through the system and interact with all of the different pieces that you're tracking. That's one of the major differences that they've given us about GA4 is just that customer journey. I think it's a great idea. Managing multiple properties. If you make a change to one, do you remember to make the change to the other? Do you need to make the change to the other? It can be confusing because then it also starts putting data in separate compartments. But with GA4, it's all in that one nice compartment. Now, also, instead of it being session-based, it becomes event-based. So events being hits. Now we got a question. How do you get my Google Tag Manager ID? I'll talk Tag Manager briefly later, but I am going to show everybody how to create their Google Analytics properties. To do Tag Manager, you actually go to a third-party site to configure it correctly. That would be tagmanager.google.com. So it uses, it's event-based. Events are everything that drives GA4. Events are page views, form views, scroll tracking, video views. Everything is event-based as opposed to session-based being how long that visitor stays and exactly what goes on. GA4 in some cases will actually pick up that user later on as they go, especially if they just follow the journey to another one of your systems. GA4 brings in more privacy controls. Some of the big pieces that they've included is IP masking is on by default because of GDPR. IP masking, they obfuscate a portion of your IP address. In the old days, Google used to give us the entire 4 octets, and now they're only giving you the first 3. Still helpful because it'll track to city of where somebody's coming from. So if you're a restaurant and you're trying to figure out how many of my visitors are actually in my city, it's still quite helpful. It's also no, not just the first 2. And actually, I have even read some data saying that they are only killing off 2 digits of the 4th octet. I don't quite believe that one. I believe it's they're killing off the entire 4th. But we'll see what actually happens, because it's a great question, because GA4 is still beta. It is not officially complete. They're still building it. So the information I show you today, there will be more information added to their system, more options, more events over the next several months. They're still building this. Now, it also does build in some predictive capabilities to kind of offer us some guidance. The idea, what it's doing is, as we're configuring things, it's saying, hey, we've seen traffic based on, maybe you should enable these features. That's the predictive that it's doing. It's not, there's no AI here. The robots are not coming to take over the world in this case. They're suggesting that we might want to turn on some of these other features based on the features that we turn on. We're all used to that. How many systems we go into and they're like, oh, you want remote connectivity? Do you want to be able to print from that remote connectivity as well? Yeah, so you install WooCommerce. You're sure you don't want Jetpack installed? They've all got some predictive in there. Now they're also directing a lot of integrations around. They're suggesting that we add in other things, websites, applications, all of that. So now here's the reason why we've got so many people signed up today. This date, July 1st. July 1st is nothing special for most of us. For Google, that's the date that they decided that Universal Analytics is end of life and that GA4 is the only way to collect data. Don't really know why they picked the date. Knowing Google, there's some interesting story and there'll probably be a doodle to match it. But GA4 is going to be 100% live and no longer available to collect Universal Analytics as of that date. They say that for a period of time, Universal data will be available. They do not say what that period of time is. That might be July 1st. That might be 2025. They have not told us, and they may not tell us. It may just be an email that comes out that says, okay, we're shutting that data off. Current recommendation, in my opinion, I am collecting Universal and GA4 side by side, and I have been for a few months, so that when August and September roll around, sure, I've got the GA4 data from this year, but I might also still have some from last year that I can compare my year-over-year numbers. I'm going to take about 30 seconds, see if anybody wants to throw questions in the window, mostly because I need a breath of air. Okay, so now Google Analytics versus, GA4 versus Universal Analytics. Yeah, Google is they are not going to migrate data. They will help us migrate certain settings, but there will be no data migration. If we want to migrate the data, there's off-site third-party systems to do it. I have not looked into those. If anybody knows of one, let me know, because a lot of people ask me this question. And if I can give them the answer, that'd be great. So GA4, it's our new idea, and it's to track everything together instead of separately like we used to. But the idea is that it's going to give us a better picture, because what it's going to do is it's going to track across all the different channels. It's going to track that entire journey, and that's where GA4 is coming up. So I don't know if SiteKit's going to do. From my experience with SiteKit, yes, it will help you set up your GA4, and for that matter, your Universal and Tag Manager. But migrating data that's previously stored in Universal over to GA4, I don't believe is included in there, because I don't believe Google actually has a tool that will do that. But if you see that it does, let me know, please. And I will throw my email address up later for everybody. So I'm going to talk about how to set up GA4, assuming you're a new user. And then I'm going to go through adding it to Universal, because I'm also assuming that a good portion of us are existing users. So again, create your analytics account. You go to analytics.google.com. And then what's going to happen, and I'm going to pop over and show you a live Google here in a second, so that you can see some of these pieces. We create the analytics account. It's real easy. When you tell it to sign up, it uses your Google account that you're signed in under. I mentioned the one that you're signed in under because most of us have multiple Google accounts. So check which one you're signed in under before you start your setup. Yes, you can move it, but better to not have to. So under the admin, you're going to click on in the account column, you're going to click create an account. And I am just pulling up to analytics. Hold on. What they're talking about is here in the account, you just click on create account. Nice big button at the, well, not so big button, but a button at the top. Provide your account name, pretty straightforward. Configure your data sharing settings. It's a pop-up. How much data do you want to give to Google? I usually turn all of the options off, because these are not the options of what you're collecting. These are the options of what you're sharing with Google for them to use to remarket and to train their other services. Click next, and it will give you your GA4 code. Then we'll go in and do a configuration. So, correct. The terminology between Universal and GA4 is not apples to apples. So and there are certain things that GA4 will not collect. In particular, bounce rate. Bounce rate is a term that they're getting rid of. So they're replacing that with session time. And well, what happens? Do they click to offsite, or do they click to another page? So it kind of varies on that one. So when we create our data stream, creating the property is great, but that's where we then have to create our data stream to start getting the data into it. Options are iOS, Android, web. Obviously, in the case of today, I'm going to talk web because we're mostly dealing with our websites, but we could track other systems. Add your URL just like we did with Universal, and create a stream name. So I'm gonna pop back over here, and what that means. Whoops. We're creating our stream name and our URL. Pretty straightforward. This is reference purposes that it wants to know what these are. You have the ability to turn on the enhanced measurement. I turn it on. I always turn it on. That may not be the best for everybody's use case, but I always turn it on because it gives me more data. Turning on the enhanced measurement, I can still go in and selectively disable pieces that I don't want to collect, but it's better to collect the data that you need than to not collect the data that you need. Now, automatically, you get your basics, you get your page views, your basic events. But the enhanced gives you things like e-commerce. It gives you things like form tracking, I don't know about scroll tracking. I think that might be a default one. So I always enable it. Click create. I know that one's kind of redundant, but yeah. No, Google does not collect everything by default. It is limited, which is why the enhanced option, similar to the old days with Universal, where we used to turn on the pieces to get the demographics information and the enhanced e-commerce. They've just made it easier for us with a single toggle to turn everything on. So that's right here. This enhanced measurement is right here on the web stream page. Right below it, there is a cog that allows us to toggle certain pieces on and off. For instance, since this one's been configured, they added the option for form interactions, so I'm going to turn that on while I'm in here. But scrolls, outbound clicks, site search, form, video, file downloads are not on by default. So this question, does turning on this extra impact my performance? If it does, please get off of my favorite hosting providers. If you're on, in general, these should not impact site performance, because the data itself is still the same script on the site. It's just a matter of what does Google do with the data when they receive it? Do they actually collect it, or do they just ignore it? It's data that's being output by the site, and if you've enabled the system to collect it, your site will then output it, and Google will grab it. If you don't, then they don't. But that is a great question, because when you're looking at something like Tag Manager, you can impact the performance of your site based on what you're collecting if you get pixel happy. If you end up adding multiple Facebook pixels, Yelp, LinkedIn, Twitter, et cetera, you can impact performance with Tag Manager. Now, if you've already got analytics in place, and I would guess, based on the number of people here, that 75% of us have analytics in place already, at least, maybe higher. There's a little wizard. There is a little wizard that will help you set this up. and it will link it to your Universal Analytics property, which will allow us to migrate certain settings over. So it's going to create our new property. And now this wizard, because somebody's going to ask where this wizard is, which is a great question to ask. And what it is if you are on your Universal property, there is a GA4 setup assistant right here at the top. They want to make sure that we can't miss it. They could have put it in bold or something, but that's okay. When we click on this, it's going to help us set everything up. It's going to automatically copy our basics, our property name, our URL, our time zones, our currency settings, the basics that we've configured that says who we're collecting data for. It automatically turns on the enhanced measurement. I think that's great. I think that should be turned on by default anyway. But I've been a geek for a long time. No, so you do not. This actually is setting up GA4 based on a Universal Analytics configuration. So the first couple slides, we're setting up GA4, assuming you're a brand new analytics user. This wizard is based on, I've got a Universal Analytics property and I want to add a GA4 property.
So Eric, just real quick. So you don't have to set up G4 before you do that?
To do the wizard? No.
Yeah.
No, because what the wizard's doing, the wizard is actually based on my Universal Analytics property. I've got a Universal, and because of that, it gives me this setup assistant. It's assuming that I've had Universal out there for a period of time, and I'm just getting ready to go and set up GA4 now so that I can start collecting the data on my terms. And then it gives me my nice little wizard to set it up. And again, it does activate that enhanced automatically. Now, this is that neat little piece. It creates a connection between Universal and GA4. That connection helps us to migrate certain configurations, because it'll allow us to automatically migrate certain pieces. It also allows us to use a single code snippet if we're doing this manually, to embed Google on our site. So for those of you in the room that are custom website designers that embed your Google Analytics right into your theme, I don't recommend it. In case you hand the site off, the next person doesn't know about it, and they can disable analytics by mistake. But in case you're doing that, or in the old HTML days, we had to do it that way. If you're hand embedding your Universal using the GTag JavaScript file, once you run this wizard and it links the two properties, you don't have to update anything on your website. It will automatically start tracking your GA4 using that same piece of code. Now, if you're running Tag Manager, if you're running a plugin like most of us are, then there are some adjustments that you have to do to get this running. So, hey, look at that. I talked through just exactly what it says. Now, you'll notice this very bottom line. It will not backfill old data. It is not going to migrate Universal data to GA4. It does not happen. We still have to look at Universal to get the data. We can export and use a third-party service like Firebase and who knows how many others out there, Data Studio. But it will not migrate Universal data over to GA4 because they're a different format. It's like putting a four lug tire on a 5 lug car. It doesn't work. So, this is a duplicate slide. Okay, yeah, this is a duplicate slide. Or actually, it's out of order. This is how to get to the piece. I will fix the slide order before I send it to you, Doug. I already walked you through this. I just put them in the wrong order. It happens. So we'll just skip right past that for you. Once you've got this created, you get to choose how you want to do your code. So after you've created that Google Analytics 4 property, you'll be able to decide how you want to embed the code. You can either create and continue, or you create a property, and it will actually do your linking and let you use that existing code. It depends. So the question is, if you use the GA4 setup, you don't need to use Tag Manager. It depends. If you're using Monster Insights and you've got your your UA property set up in Monster Insights as a UA dash number, yes, you'll still need to do something else to get GA4 to track on the site. And I throw out Monster Insights because so many hosts pre-install that. If you're using Google Tag Manager and you've got Tag Manager set up for Universal, you'll need to edit Tag Manager to track GA4. If you have coded your website by hand and you have embedded the GTag JavaScript file, or the link to it that Google gives you directly in code, once you do this linking, it will automatically start tracking the GA4. Most people are not embedding the GTag script directly. Most people are doing it via a plugin. Monster Insights, SiteKit. Monster Insights probably more common than SiteKit. Rank Math. I mean, even some of the SEO plugins will auto embed your tracking codes. I recommend Tag Manager. Just gives me a lot more flexibility. Now, when you set up the tag, again, this is where it's going to give us the option. That used Google tag found on your website is the hand coded in your theme. If you're doing it in a child theme, okay, that's a little better. I actually saw somebody update their original Divi theme code to include the GTag file. Then they updated Divi and wondered why they stopped getting any data. Please don't do that. Please. We've all seen some fun stuff. Now, Universal used to call everything a hit type. It was a page hit. It was a form hit. It was everything was a hit type. Even e-commerce was a hit type. I don't know if it's an inclusive term that they've changed that to be event type, or if it just is the fact that it makes a lot more sense to call it an event type. Because sure, a page hit, somebody hits that page, great. Somebody hits that product, okay. But they visit a form, they scroll through a form, they populate form fields. Those sound more like events to me, which is the new terminology. Makes a lot more sense. But, in this day and age, why does somebody name something one way versus the other is kind of a an up in the air idea. This is the power of GA4, the session based instead of user based. So it's based on a given time frame. So if a user stops interacting with your page for 20 minutes and comes back, that's still the same session. Even if they've left your page and come back to your page, it's still considered the same session. The timeout number is 30 minutes. So any interaction with anything that has your GA4 tracking on it, that happens with less than a 30-minute break between interactions is considered a session. So if I hit Doug's website right now, it's 6:45, and I spent 2 minutes on the website, and I go away until 7:30. It's a new session. But if I do it until 7:10, it's considered the same, which is really kind of neat, because how many people get distracted, but they're still on your site? So they haven't really bounced off your page. They've gotten distracted. They've interacted with something and needed data to fill out a form. It's not a bounce rate. That's why that bounce rate term has kind of gone away. Now, again, universal, multiple page views, social interactions, could all equaled out the same way. It's still the same basic idea with just a lot of improvement. I really want to get through the slides so that I can just show you the live stuff. The live stuff's a lot more interesting than the slides. Now, data settings that can be migrated are gonna be pretty basic. It's your cookie customizations, your ads personalizations. Those are your data collection settings that migrate one-to-one. That's it. That is the one-to-one things that migrate. And I see Mary Ann scribbling those notes down.
Do I write notes?
I love it. Now, no equivalent, where Google and where UA and GA4 have no equivalent. IP masking control. It's on by default in GA4. In Universal, you did it manually if you wanted to mask it. Custom tasks. There's no one-to-one. You have to create new things in GA4. Timing is not available. So, and I don't know a lot of people that are using timing. I've never used it, so I can't really speak to it. But GA4 does a lot of things different. They are trying to be more compliant with the GDPR laws. They're not. But they're trying. The biggest one that they're not compliant with is where the data is stored. Almost all Google data is stored here in the States. And shipping data from Europe to the States is technically on the you shouldn't do that list. So we'll see what happens when everything gets fleshed out. But right now, GDPR and GA4 are supposed to play nice together. I got a couple of links for you. These are completely for your reference for later on when you download the slides. Let's look at analytics, because really this is why everybody's here. You want to see what it does, how we can collect things, how things are configured. Now, the most important piece, this piece right here, this button here that says connected property and shows that my GA4 and my universal are connected together. Having the two of those connected together is what allows us to reuse that G tag if we've hand coded things. You can set up basic properties. You can do things the wrong way. By default, when you use this wizard, it automatically connects it. It automatically enables certain features. It automatically tries to make your life easier. DK, question.
Stepping back one where you just mentioned that GA4 has no equivalence. Were you
Correct.
talking about competitors?
No, universal to GA4.
Oh,
So-
gotcha. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, no, I can't, I know that you've got a service that you like to use. And one of these days I hope to play with that service. It's on my list of things to do.
Well, one of the things about it, just more of a fundamental thing, is they already know that Universal Analytics is not GDPR compliant.
Right.
GA4 is supposed to be, and that means GA4 is going to take the main selling point of all these others. In this case, it's Fathom that I'm using. And so you answered the question. I wondered if you had any experience with that or what you thought of those competitors, but I guess the verdict's out or not out yet. So.
Right. No, specifically what I was talking about of the one-to-one is between Universal and GA4. Because I'm going to guess that you and I are probably in the minority playing with things like Fathom. I know there's a few of us on here that will, Doug. But we're probably in the minority.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. And as always, for those of you that keep coming back to listen to me talk, thank you. So GA4, the wizard, it's easy. Couple of clicks and gets us to where we need to be. Now, once we've got this set up, once we've got this configured, I don't need a tour. Standard settings in here. I mean, we've got our standard property settings. What's our name? What's our time zone? Our currency. If you've linked it, it pre-populated all this for you. Standard configuration to give people access as you need to. Our data stream. This is where we get the piece of the code that we need to put into our website or to GA4 or to Tag Manager. Our measurement ID, right here, it's a G number instead of UA number. I never understood why Universal Analytics instead of GA3 or G3 or whatever, but it's Google. They do what they do. We do have the ability to come in here and set up custom events. So while I said that it doesn't automatically migrate them, we do have the ability to create our own custom events in here. Now, a lot of things I actually prefer to let the data start to flow through and then turn features on based on some of that data. Because I can run in a testing phase on a new build and start to get standard interactions. As you're testing your e-commerce, it starts to give you e-commerce events that your website sends. So over here, this is a website that does not run e-commerce. So these are the standard events that are coming through on this page. And I have the ability to decide whether or not I want that to become a conversion. If I want to track a conversion, so every time somebody clicks, every time there's a first visit, whatever it might be, if I want to track that, I enable that as a conversion, and it allows me to do that. I can also create my events in here. And we do have options to do conditionals on those events. A fairly typical one, tracking the confirmation page from a contact form. Now it does give me a large list of items that are predetermined if I want to use one of those, but I can also create my own name. And if the I want to do this, if the event name equals whatever, because I've created a custom event, it'll create my configuration for me. So I do have the ability to do things like that. I don't want to actually save that one. Gotta love Google helping me out with pop-ups. So I then end up with my conversion list. And sometimes it'll turn some on by default. This, for some reason, it always turns purchase on as a default conversion, which is useless on a site that's not e-commerce, but it does that. So navigating through the data, it is a little different. When we come out here, Explore takes us to where Explore takes us to the front end and then gives us maps. They've changed this again. This was different a couple weeks ago. Doug, Ryder.
Yeah, just real quick. Back before that, where you were talking about a form and also some of the other capabilities, is this for the entire website? You talked about a specific page. Do they show you what the page is that you're looking at, or?
Yeah. So once I start navigating the data, it'll start to show me where things are hitting. So what I might do is, if I was creating a conversion, if I was creating an event, I would create my event, and
that's just the slug that you're getting, the permalink. Thanks. Is that
yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then I'm saying that that my event name, but I can actually change this to where is it?
Page title.
Page location, page refer, page title.
Okay.
But I believe there's also I believe they might have moved it again. Yeah. So page if I was to use page title,
Okay.
I usually use page location, because page location lets me throw up a full URL.
Okay.
And then I throw up my URL that is
But okay, yes. So if you did save this and went back, would you be able to know what page you actually were looking for? Because I couldn't see any link, or not a link, but URL on the previous page.
right. So this would allow me to create an event that I can then make turn into a conversion.
Okay. Yeah.
Then when I'm digging through my when I come in here under Explore, I could actually create, and they've moved it again. When I come in over here under reports, which is backwards to me, I then have the ability to look at all of my different pieces. There's my conversions.
Okay.
I could look at my conversions and it can show, oh, okay, these are all the people that have hit that page, that event.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a little screwy the way they've got it, because you look at this and you think, oh, Explorer should give me all of my stuff. And at one point it did, but now they've put it into reports. So in here, I do get the ability to go through and look at what pages are most viewed. I get to look at, and then I can drill down. So if I come in on this page, no, oh man, they keep changing this. This is the problem with beta software. It's not really ready for prime time, but that's what they're giving us. We go through here, and when it's working correctly, it gives us the ability to look at things. But we have the ability to create filters on the fly and pull up we'll do gender. And we'll narrow it down. And we'll do browser. And now it's going to track down only females that used Safari.
Wow.
So it allows us to tinker with things, and it's like, oh well, yeah, that didn't work because you excluded everybody. So we get the ability. No, you do not need to set up an event for every page on your website. The idea is those events are for special conversions, because there's no official form fill event. That what we do is we track the confirmation page. If you're doing a campaign and you want to track visits specific to a landing page, a funnel of some type, you might set up a conversion based on that funnel page. What I like to do is, on the funnel page, I tend to over collect, and I want to know how many people hit the page, how far they scrolled, and if there's videos on the page, how long they watched the video for before I got them to finally convert. Because I want to know, did they convert on the first button at the top or on the third one at the bottom? Did they watch it? Did they watch a video while they were on the site? I want to know that, because if I'm getting everybody to convert on the first button, well, good for me. But why am I wasting my time putting the other two buttons on there? If I'm getting 10% of the people to convert on the third button and nobody on the first two, well, I need to try harder and fine tune where I'm advertising so that the audience is more likely to convert on a button.
Any button.
Yeah. So we get when we go through here, it's based on the data that Google collects at the point that it's production. There should be more data, but it gives us our organic search, our direct, our organic search, our organic social. Say that once. Referral traffic, how long people are staying engaged, how many people are visiting. It gives us all of this information. It's just moved where it's putting the data. Traffic acquisition is really one that I like better, because when I see that I'm doing more from organic search than from direct, well, that's kind of cool. That means something's working right. For the fact that a significant amount of people can actually find me in search. Now, we're hoping at some point this will allow us to expand out, because the fact that it says organic search and then doesn't let us expand out is kind of useless to me. Well, what did they search on? And it doesn't tell me. This is GA4 is great, but it's not great. it's a work in progress. There are times that you'll come in here and these reports, the reports will not work. But the other thing you will notice, and this is an important one, if you're comparing apples to apples, UA to GA4, the numbers may vary because GA4 is tracking things differently. So without the bounce rate, with the sessions instead of user, certain numbers will skew. In particular, session, how long somebody stayed, and the number of new users. Yeah, I mean, Search Console does sometimes give you some of the search terms. It's not perfect. It gives us less than it used to. Search Console is just one of the pieces. There is one individual that highly recommends, even if your audience is not outside the US, that you still get registered on Yandex, because their search console is good. Doug knows who I'm talking about. Their search console is pretty good, gives you some good information. And it's free. It's easy to set up. And as a bonus, they even give you a Yandex email address, just in case. Sometimes, yes, it will tell you what browser they're on. Sometimes it will tell you their screen dimensions. The date, as long as you're collecting the data, when they're ready to show it to you, sometimes it's on a Tuesday, sometimes it's on a Thursday. When they're ready to show the data to you, the data is there. So it does give us that. Down here under tech details, it is breaking it out by the browser. And sometimes this does expand out and start to give you screen dimensions on the browsers. And I do not see the Nokia flip phone on here, which is great because I know this account should not have anybody doing that. Most of her visitors, I would guess, are probably between 40 and 60. Does Google document stuff? Yes. Where do they document it? Sometimes we can find it, sometimes we can't. The functions, I find that the functions probably change every couple of weeks. They'll add a little something, they'll move something around, they'll tweak something. It is a work in progress. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it is nice to see that most of her traffic is actually coming from the US, but it's surprising to see how much is coming from Poland, for the fact that she specializes and targets specifically 3 counties in North Texas. 3 counties. But you know how the internet is. There's a website out there, somebody will find it and they'll look at it and have no idea what it's for. But
I don't know. We have people immigrating from Poland via Mexico.
We have people from everywhere immigrating via any path they can find.
Right. So I mean that could be what this is they're looking for an attorney.
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. Yeah. Questions. And I don't know, Doug, Marianne, what you guys feel about people raising hands, unmuting. It's your party.
What works for you?
Not everybody yelling at once, but anything else is fine.
Let's do hands. People can raise hands or they can write a question in the chat box if they, whichever they prefer.
So Eric, are you done with your slides then now? You just want to go to Q&A or?
You know, let me pop over there and let me show you guys the last slide.
Okay.
And there, and I'll actually leave this up here while people are getting ready for questions so that everybody's got my contact info. And I'm going to throw it in the chat window. Big differences between the two. Universal, I think, is easier to navigate and drill down the data and build custom reports. I think GA4 is more logically laid out. Events make more sense than hits. The session where it wants to track the entire journey makes more sense to me than, okay, somebody clicked on a link in my MailChimp campaign. Okay, well, MailChimp already told me that. I just had to look in another place. So I think that's the big thing between the two that I've currently seen. On the GDPR front, we're hoping, I will say that I am hoping that GDPR stands up and somebody makes a decision soon so that I can either go whole hog into GA4 or move to something else. But I also have a lot of opinions. Jenny's got a question.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. It's great. I haven't been to one of these events in forever, and it's just really good to be back.
Welcome back. You picked a great night to come.
Thanks. Yeah. So, my question: I have a number of website clients who enjoy, and I kind of just office when I set them up with websites, was to send them a monthly report. Have a monthly report automatically sent to their email address from Google Analytics that showed kind of the monthly overview, all that good information. So in the course of transitioning people to Google Analytics 4, I found, I figured out how to do it, but it looks like these individual events, you can mail out little individual reports about individual metrics, but nothing that's consolidated that I've been able to find. Do you know?
Right. Well, so what I've been doing, and it's not perfect, but what I've been doing is I actually take this reports snapshot page and I create my own custom version. I'll duplicate it and I will move around the boxes that I want them to have. And then I will just send them that link. And I'll just schedule it in my mail system to send them a link monthly to just, hey, here is exactly the information that you've asked for, so that I just lay it out that way, because there's no good reporting mechanism yet.
Yeah, because it used to be just a PDF that they would get, and they
Yes.
really seem, some of them really love that, and they don't want to go into Google Analytics because it's always, as you mentioned, it's always changing. They don't know where to find anything, all of that.
Yeah, I've been lucky so far that that sending out this one link that gives them this custom dashboard has worked.
That's a really good workaround. Thank you. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, and it and basically there's a little share link where they can just come see it. And you can give them very limited access to the property so that they can't break the report on themselves.
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of them like to have it or like to be able to do it in-house, but just to also be administrative. But yeah.
Yeah. Now, it's a manual option. You can always download a PDF of the report and email it, but it's manual.
Mm-hmm.
Which I like automation. I get the idea of if it can go automatically. And as soon as they give us that option, I'm guessing that Doug's going to be sending out an email telling people, hey, look at this cool new thing.
Mhm. Is this the kind of thing that they would upcharge for? Like, they,
No.
okay.
Well, no is the official answer, but they do have things called, believe it's called Data Studio 360. And I think they have another service that those are paid services that will ingest your data and allow you to build out custom reports and send them out. And they are Google products.
Okay.
If you're good at coding, you can probably interface with Google Cloud and script a report.
Mhm.
Nah, that just sounds like too much work. At that point, I'd rather just manually download the PDF once a month.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if there's somewhere that we can put our fingers on the scales collectively and say we want this feature continued, that I'll look for that.
That would be wonderful if we could figure out who to contact to get them to move it. And Scott, always on top of it. Data Studio does not support GA4 yet. Yeah, like I said, GA4 is still beta. They're still working on this one.
Thank you.
Can you add a user to your property? Because I've done that in the past
Yes.
with Google Analytics and just said, okay, here, you log in anytime. Here you go, look at it.
Yep. The one word of caution on that is read your user.
Right.
Is your user qualified to go in there, or are you going to spend more time explaining to them how to open a new browser tab and get there than it would take you to send them the data? Just experience. Some end users really need their hand held. Charge them a little bit more and hold their hand. And for those that can do it, let them run wild.
Right.
Let them run wild. Let them build their 42 custom reports and look at it. Oh, you know who I'm talking about, don't you?
Yeah.
I don't know his name offhand, but I know there's somebody out there that we both know that. So Steven, if you're already running Universal and you use the GA4 wizard, it depends. How do you have your analytics configured on your website? Are you using a plugin, or are you using, have you coded it into your theme? Okay, so most likely you're using a plugin, possibly Monster Insights or something similar, which means you will either need to convert to Google Tag Manager, or you will need to find a plugin that supports GA4. And then you can embed your GA4 tracking code. Absolutely, Everett. Glad you made it. And like I said, I did throw my contact information up here. If somebody has a question about that I gave info on tonight, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to answer some questions, point you at other meetup groups to join. And I know Eagle might have a nice little list for us later on. I had a lot of information, but I couldn't have answered everybody's question.
Just a general question about GA4. Do you think Google was pushed to do this because of the GDPR?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because this, in my opinion, when it was originally released, it was obviously a work in progress. when they gave us a date, and it's still had that work in progress sign hanging on it. I mean, I would expect that if they truly plan to go live 100% July 1st, that they would have been working a lot harder on this a lot earlier. That might be opinion, but there's definitely a lot of rough edges that we're working with, of new features that keep getting added. And I can't think the last time they added a new feature to Universal Analytics.
Right.
Well, while the last of you were thinking of questions, I do want to thank everybody for listening to me. Thank everybody for attending. Thank Doug, Doug and Mary Ann for having me back. I do recommend you go look at the Tag Manager presentation from last month. Tag Manager is really cool, and that's how I like to integrate and implement my GA4. So SiteKit, hold on. If we're using SiteKit, I'm going to have to refer to somebody that uses SiteKit, because I have not installed the plugin on any of my sites. Do we need to do anything with once we've done the wizard to use SiteKit and GA4, or does it just kind of work? I think it just kind of works.
I've got another question, Eric. So
Yeah.
if you have, let's say you have the sites set up in Universal Analytics, you are not using Tag Manager at this point. You want to bring it into GA4. Should you install Tag Manager first, then go into your Universal Analytics and hit the button that says to set it up with GA4, or what?
My standard process, and I've done a couple of these. My standard process is I hit my analytics account. I configure my Universal and my GA4 and write down both of my tracking codes, store my tracking codes in a text file. And then I'm done with analytics. I hop over to Tag Manager. I build out my Tag Manager account, my Tag Manager container, implement my 2 tracking codes because I use my my constants. And then I've got my Tag Manager code that I'm going to put on my site. I deploy Tag Manager to my site, but I don't enable it. I deploy it, configure it, have it ready to go. And then as soon as it's all ready to go, I enable it and disable the existing analytics on the site, flush cache, and I'm off and running.
Okay, so you go with your Google Analytics account, and then you configure it to GA4. You have it bring it up. You keep your tracking codes. Then you go to Google Tag Manager. Do you install it on your site at that point?
Yeah. So I'm actually writing the steps down. So I update Universal. I config GA4. I create Tag Manager. I create my container. I create and populate my container. I install my plugin. Configure my plugin. I disable my site analytics. Enable tag manager. And I mean, step 7, that's right at the same time. I enable one and disable the other. And then the love autofill. And always, I'll flush the cache 3 times sometimes, because some of those tracking plugins are well, they'll hold on tight.
Sticky, yeah.
Yeah, they will hold on tight. And if I would rather flush the cache a couple times than get stuck miscounting.
One question on step 4, create and populate the container. You do that in Google Analytics 4, correct?
Tag manager.
Google Tag Manager, okay. Then you install it onto the website.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And configure it in the website.
Mhm.
How do you disable the site analytics and enable Google Tag Manager?
Depends upon how the site analytics are integrated. If
Okay.
it's Monster Insights, I take a big hammer and I beat the thing off of my website.
I don't use Monster Insights.
Yeah, no. Really, what I generally do is it depends upon how it's enabled. If it's a plugin, I disable the plugin. If it's in one of those insert headers footers type of plugins, I just delete the code from that plugin, or disable that insert, or whatever I need to do to make sure that it's not running.
What if I just put it in, there's a small file I got from Google, whenever I signed it up for Google Analytics, and I put it in the
Then I go
files.
through then I do an SSH into the site and I delete the file.
Okay, so just delete that file out.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Because that's usually how I do it. I just put it up there, put that file in, and it just, it's like a 1-line piece of code.
Yep.
That I put in the files for the site. Okay. So I would remove that file from the site.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because you don't want to have multiple copies running on the site.
Okay. But Google will still know that you are authorized to own that, to ask for analytics on that site.
Yes. Well, no, so you're thinking site verification.
Right.
Okay, so that site verification code, I also never upload that to my site. I do that via DNS.
Okay.
I always put my site verifications for anything that accepts it in DNS instead of on a file on the website.
Okay.
Because that way, even if I hand the site over to somebody, or somebody migrates the site, as long as the DNS records are there, the verification's in place. But if somebody starts cleaning things up,
what if you did upload the site verification to the site files?
you can always change it to DNS.
Okay.
I mean, you can leave it there; it's fine.
Okay, so that doesn't have to be removed; it can stay
No.
there.
No,
Okay.
the file in particular that if you've got a file that is gtag.js,
Mm-hmm.
that's the file that's problematic.
Okay.
That's your Google tag.
Okay.
You're thinking of a file that's a bunch of gibberish.html.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the site verification. And I always put that into DNS.
Okay.
I find that putting it in DNS, it's just, first off, all of my stuff's in one place.
Right.
And it I won't say that it prevents. it does help the next developer designer from doing something that causes a problem.
Right.
But you can put both of them in. You can put it in the root level of whatever domain you're working with.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as you have both, it'd be fine. Fall
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even even for the Bing verification, now that they let you verify via Google, I still put the Bing DNS record in.
I do too. Yeah.
Yes, Doug Ewan, here we go. Those labels in Cloudflare, those are, boy, are those great. The ability to label a DNS entry so that you know what it's for, and even better, so that somebody else knows what it's for. So if you ever use Klaviyo, I think it's Klaviyo. Yeah, if you ever use Klaviyo, they create records that look exactly like SendGrid records because they're sending via SendGrid. So if you're running SendGrid and Klaviyo, you end up with 4 records that look very similar, and having those labels. Wow.